Okay, let's talk the theory about what we had yesterday. So yeah, this riff, really the second riff of the song. Focusing, or the riffs in the B Phrygian there. And it's really those notes right here that give it that sound. So if you played other things kind of around it, but you just kept focusing really on just that C to B there. So you can fiddle around making Phrygian riffs of your own. You really got to make sure that you get that B and that C in there plenty of times. And of course you can just loop this in Guitar Pro, solo on top of it. And you can still use an E minor pentatonic. No, you can't. It sounds terrible. You could use a B minor pentatonic. But no, I don't like that either. Wrong scale. Oh yeah, you could. I don't think that riff is very well suited for a guitar solo. So you could do it. I wasn't really feeling that one. I think that's a riff that should just be on its own. Anyway, so yeah, just playing in your full E minor scale stuff. Focusing on B as your home bass. Always a good idea to have B as your home bass when you're trying to play in B Phrygian, which is in the key of E minor or key of G major. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, then it goes back to that main riff again and the new stuff. So you got the lead going on there. Pretty simple there. You got your root note there. So if notes being used, you got your first, or intervals being used, you got your 1, 4, and 5. And then here, that's your first and the flat third. Basically using those 4 notes, right? Those 4 notes. So those together sound very Aeolian. You don't have, the regular second in there, which is not necessary to sound Aeolian. I think it's going to sound pretty much Aeolian with those notes. What am I trying to say here? Because you got the other modes in the key of G or E minor. Because you can have, Dorian, which has a minor, has those same 4 intervals, right? Dorian has this, Aeolian has it, and Phrygian. But I feel like when you don't use the other intervals, like a second or flat second, major 6 or minor 6, or a 6 and a flat 6, then, you're not using the intervals that really make like Phrygian stand out from Aeolian. You're not using intervals that make Aeolian and Dorian stand apart from each other. So because even though all 3 modes, like your Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian, because all 3 of those use these same intervals, to me, by default, because again, you're not using like a flat second or minor 6 or major 6, then my ear defaults to Aeolian. It just feels Aeolian. And because we know this is in the key of E minor, that's another good reason to just say, like, yep, it's definitely Aeolian. Now, the chords going along with it, well, that makes it even more Aeolian. So if we were just basing it on the lead, you got some, we'll say, more thinking to do if it was just the lead, because you have only 4 intervals being used for the lead and not a bunch. So the chord part, change that. That definitely makes it more obvious this is an E Aeolian, because you're basically going between these 2 chords, like your E minor and your D major. So you got your E minor notes, E, F, or F, E, I was about to say F sharp, E, G, and B, along with D, F sharp, and A. So now you got even more intervals being used. So you have the first, flat third, and 5. So with E being the tonal center, that means your D note is the flat 7. Your F sharp is the second. And the A note is the 4. So you got your 1, flat second, or 1, 2, flat third, 4, 5, and flat 7. So and that's using those notes of the E minor and the D major there. So again, like, you could end up playing a Dorian thing on top of that, and it could work. But because of what, we have here, we're gravitating towards the Aeolian sound, and also because of the key of the song and how everything else has been played. But check it out. You could absolutely just loop this. Yeah, you can solo with a... right there, I just switched back from Dorian to Aeolian. And there was Dorian again. And you can have that kind of freedom in something like this, going between Aeolian and Dorian, because there is no flat 6 or 6, basically no minor 6 or major 6 being played in that part of the song. At least on the chord progression right here in Guitar Pro. The bass might hit it, I don't remember. I don't think the bass does. But because the 6 or the flat 6 are not present in that part of the song, if you wanted to solo over that, you have the option to do it in Aeolian or Dorian. And then you change the mode of the song by doing that. So, cool thing you can do when making your own solos. Like if you leave room for that in a chord progression, then yeah, you can absolutely do that. Just change the mode as you're going. Typically, the chord progression is what dictates the mode, but when the chord progression leaves, like focuses on some intervals of like say 2 different modes, but not all of them, like we had here. Basically, all the intervals were present for Aeolian and Dorian except the 6th note. Because that was missing, you could either hit a minor 6 or a major 6 and it still fit. Anyway, so then, yeah, what we got started for this next part, it's basically like a variation of like an E minor, D major, C major, B minor kind of progression. So from a major scale perspective, we would have a 6, 5, 4, 3 progression. From the minor scale perspective, we would have a 1, 7, 6, 5 progression. And either way, yeah, it's based off of those chords. There's that little chromatic passing tone or passing note section of the song, or that riff, which you can do when you have a whole step in between notes of the key. Now with this, I mean, you basically have the 1st, 5th, if E is the tonal center, which it is, because this is still E Aeolian. You have the 1, 5, that would be the flat 7 and 4. That's your flat 6. That's your flat 3rd, that's your 5, and that's your 2nd. So all intervals for Aeolian are covered in this part. So if you were to try and do the whole mode change thing like I just demonstrated, you have to be very careful when you do it, and it may not work so well because this progression going through is clearly Aeolian. That'd be a fun one to solo on top of. So let's do that. So yeah, you can use just your E minor pentatonic. That works fine. You can even use some blues scale stuff because of that little chromatic part. Ooh, that's too high of a bit. Oh my god. I'm hitting wrong notes here. I'm using some of that extended blues scale stuff we talked about. Even like if it's not in that scale, if you can just like kind of visualize where you have the whole step notes, like right in there, kind of works. Of course, just regular old Aeolian, A minor scale, diatonic stuff. Alright. And there we go. So, hopefully that stuff helps the understanding of the modes and the song and all that stuff. And as always, any questions, let me know. I'll see you again next week.